Rich, if it should be Aaron Rodgers, what are the Steelers getting here?
Well, thanks for having me, first of all. I think you'd get a highly motivated quarterback who I think wanted to stay with the Jets and was probably upset that they didn't want to continue with him. So I think he'll be highly motivated. He plays with a chip on his shoulder. He's got that competitive arrogance that I think all the great players have. Now, as you mentioned, he's going into his age 42 season. He's not the same Aaron Rodgers we saw pre-Achilles injury. I think his mobility was compromised last season. He wasn't able to have those moments where he was able to slide in the pocket and make those off-platform throws that made him such a legendary quarterback. There were just few and far between last year. I think he played well in about 8 or 9 games last year where you saw, like, okay, that's the Aaron Rodgers. And then there were another 8 or 9 games where he just looked old. So I think the Steelers would be getting a guy who some weeks will just leave you like saying, wow, that guy's incredible. And there'll be some weeks, for whatever reason, whether it's the weather, the opponent, or just Mother Nature making his body feel bad, where you'll say, man, that guy should just hang it up. So I think they'd be getting somewhere in between that.
Now, the Giants are believed to be the other suitor. So being in New York as you are, how would you rate the odds here on Giants or Steelers?
Well, as an outsider, I mean, you look at it, and to me it's a no-brainer. You'd want to go to the Steelers, just a better organization, closer to contending. And look, I know the Steelers, they have their issues. They're going through, a lot of teams going through in the offseason, losing players and so forth. But they're closer than the Giants are. The one thing the Giants have in their favor, he has a house in Montclair, New Jersey, which is, probably 20 minutes from Giant Stadium. He spent a fortune on the house. I know he did some renovations on it already. So you would think that would give him a little home cooking there where, would give the Giants a little edge. The Giants are trying to do stuff to their offense, to keep it interesting. I mean, they have a decent offensive line. They re-signed, their number 2 receiver, Darius Slayton. But they're going in, much like the Jets last year, that's a lame duck coaching staff. I mean, and a GM, they're all fighting for their jobs this year, like the Jets were last year. So I think it's a toss-up. I think the lure of New York appeals to Aaron just to maybe stick it to the Jets to show that he could still play doing it in their own backyard. I think that probably is a factor. But, I mean, there's no doubt that the Steelers are closer to contention.
Now, I couldn't help but notice that Aaron's best games last year, at least in terms of passer rating, were 2 against Miami, 2 against New England, 1 against Jacksonville, 1 against Indy, and then a pretty good Houston team. And then against the good teams, he seemed to struggle. Is there a lesson there?
You're right on the money. You're doing your homework because it is a striking difference in the playoff teams they faced versus the non-playoff teams. And, a couple of those games, his best game was the Jacksonville game, which was on a nice, beautiful day down in Jacksonville in December. Same with the Miami game down in Miami in December. So I think he played better toward the end of the last year, partly because he went through some injuries. Like I said, I don't think he was ever 100% after the Achilles, but he also had a severely pulled hamstring that he played through. He had a sprained knee that he played through. I give him credit. He is a tough guy. I mean, he is a tough son of a gun. He played all 17 games last year. He refused to sit out even when they were out of contention. He wanted to finish the game on his own 2 feet. So I give him, if the Steelers get him, they'd be getting a tough player. There's no question about that. Just a player who, I mean, he threw 28 touchdowns last year. When you look at that on paper, you say, wow, pretty impressive, right? 13 of them were under 10 yards, so, it wasn't, the stats are a little bit deceiving. I think he ranked 26th in total QBR, which I think is about about where he stands right now.
Rich Cimini from ESPN covers the Jets. Then there's the drama factor should Aaron Rodgers come here. It seems to me, and I guess to a lot of people, that he sort of orchestrated things in New York, certainly with the offensive coordinator coming there, maybe the head coach leaving there, some of the players he was throwing to. But I don't think he'll have that kind of, power in Pittsburgh. But what about all the other stuff? What kind of drama factor are we talking about here?
Well, there is a drama. You're certainly right about that. And he was basically the general manager here too. Once the Jets committed to him, they just went all in. They said, we are going to do whatever we can to win with Aaron Rodgers. And they took a lot of criticism for that, but I actually applauded the Jets. They wanted to try to make it work. So they brought in guys like Alan Lazard and Randall Cobb and Nathaniel Hackett, and this year they traded for Devontae Adams. They did everything they possibly could to try to make it work with Rodgers, and it didn't. Clearly, he won't have that clout with the Steelers. Now, as for the drama, it's real. He's not a bad guy, and the idea that he's a divisive force in the locker room is not accurate. Now, does every player love him? Of course not. No quarterback in the league is beloved by all 53 guys. He and Garrett Wilson did not get along last year. I think that was pretty out in the open. They just didn't click. But most of the guys really enjoyed him. He played hard. But there's the drama. He skips mini camp to take a vacation to Egypt, and gave some baloney excuse about why he did that. He got fined over $100,000 by the Jets. That was ridiculous. And he did throw Mike Williams under the bus after running the wrong route in a Monday night game. And then, a few days later, Mike Williams gets traded. I think those were probably the low points for him. But, he does do the McAfee thing every Tuesday. It's part of who he is. Is that going to be okay with Mike Tomlin? I don't know. Rodgers, he brings his own culture. And it's not to say that it's bad or he's criticizing people. He just draws so much media attention that it's almost impossible to control. Now, the Jets did a very poor job of controlling it. I certainly think Mike Tomlin, because of who he is and what he's done in the league, would have more control over that situation. But it is a factor. There's no question about it. Sometimes, when he's in the locker room, his press conferences just attract a lot of people, and he's polarizing for sure, but he is a massive draw, and that definitely casts a shadow on the rest of the players.